Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. Before we set up these characters here, now what we're going to do is essentially set up the cab that's going to drive around. The movement mechanic in this is going to be a little bit wonky because it's really just to teach you about input from a controller, how to move a character around, how to set up a camera. So let's take a quick look at our essentially our setup here. So let's make sure I'm created a blueprint, and again, we're going to go through all of this from scratch in a second, called BP Cab. And inside this BP Cab pawn, rather, I'm going to go inside of here. You can see that we have a very basic script, and what we're doing here is we're grabbing input, and we're going to create this in a second to move forward and back and turn, and we're just offsetting the location of our current static mesh. And then the same thing here, we're rotating our current actor, which is set to self, and we created a couple of variables called turn speed, move, or current. Now, where we got these input axis turn and move forward is we go to edit and then project settings. And then inside of input here, I created a axis mapping called move forward, and then this is called turn. So let's go ahead and just start with creating a new cab. So I have this one here. And I'm just going to leave this off to the side here, and then I'll delete it later just so, actually I could probably just delete it out of my scene right now. So let's right click and create a new blueprint class, and it's going to be a pawn because we want to be able to control it. And I'm just going to call this BP underscore yellow cab. And I'm going to drag this pawn into my scene here. Now let's go inside of here and set up a couple things. Like first, we want to add a static mesh, and I'm going to call this cab for our static mesh. You can stick with the naming convention, which is SM underscore cab, which is just indicating that this is a static mesh. And then off on the side here where it has none, go ahead and click on it and just grab a box. Now let's compile and save that. And you can adjust the scale of this box. If you select it in a scene and you just hit the R key, you can scale it up and down. I think by default, it's not such a bad size because we're going to replace this with an actual static mesh in the next video, which is going to be our cab. So you can see it appears in our scene. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up the camera that's going to follow our cab around. So inside of BP yellow cab here, actually, I'll leave that open in case I need to reference it. I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to add a spring arm. So I'm just going to start typing spring, and then I'm going to add a spring arm there. And if it doesn't automatically, like if it shows up like this where it's a separate object, go ahead and drag it on your spring arm. And I'm going to go ahead and hit W here and just move that back. And then up somewhere in the middle of my cube. The next thing I want to do is with my spring arm selected is I want to add a camera. And that should show up at the end, but if it doesn't, like mine, you just have to reset the transform. And now when you select your spring arm, it should show up at the very end. And I can just hit E. Well, let's rotate it right here at the target arm length. Let's expand that. And then with our, let's see, target arm length, our rotation here, let's go ahead and just rotate that up, maybe minus 35 degrees. Let's compile and save then, just see how that looks. So with that selected, this is essentially what we're seeing. Now, if I press play now, what's going to happen is you're actually going to get this other BP cab loaded into the scene. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I press play here and I scroll down, you can see it loads in. Let's see, where it is. Let me scroll back a little bit. Let me, here, sorry, let me press play. Let me detach this and let me scroll out a little bit. And actually, you know what? That's actually a good thing that it didn't load in. That's what I wanted to show you next. Let's go ahead and stop this. What I'd like to happen is when I launch the game, right? Like if I delete this BP yellow cab, because we have the pawn anyway, I'll drag it back in a second, and I press play. You could see here that we actually don't get anything loaded in. And the reason for that is we need to set, when we select our cab object, whether it's in the blueprint or the scene, if you drag it in the scene, then you'll be able to modify in the details. You'll see a possession, which will allow us to possess, like you can see auto possess player. If we set this to player 0, and Now I believe if I delete this out of the scene, unless I have to set it up in the blueprint itself, and I press play, yeah, I have to set that in the blueprint. So let me go into BPCab again and scroll down, and we might have to just type in possess if I can't find it really quickly through this. Yeah, let's just type the word possess, P-O-S-S. Oh, you know, we might have to select the B key. Yeah, there we go. You have to select the highest level. So it says auto possess player. Go ahead and set that to player 1. Compile and save that. All right, now notice I have no cabs in the scene, but when I press play, now, let's see. Why is it not loading in my cab? Let's see, maybe because, let's see, project settings, maps and modes. Let's see what we might have to make a new map. So we have an editor startup map called cab1 here, which is our startup map. And then we have no game mode. So let's see. Default game mode. So we're going to have to create a new game mode, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So let's go back here for a second, and what we'll do is let's just finish essentially creating our cab, and then once we do that, so let's drag this back in our scene, I'm going to show you how to create a game mode. And the game mode is what controls all of the settings, like what gets loaded into our scene. So, all right, so here we are. We have our BP yellow cab here. And let's go inside of here. Now, we have essentially, that's really all we need to set it up. You can adjust the camera length, and then you can camera the rotation. But what we want to do is we want to script sort of the player movement. So for that, we're going to have to map our WASD keys. So if we go to our project settings here, I've already kind of got this set up, but I'm going to just show you really quickly how to adjust the inputs, or how to create the inputs. So let's see. Under I for input, it's in alphabetical order. You can see there's these axis mappings. We're not looking for action mappings, we're looking for axis mappings. So what we want to do is we want to create something called move forward. And the way you do that is you hit the plus, and that'll create a new axis mapping. And then in here you type move forward. And then what you want to do inside of here is you want to, oops, did I delete it by accident? Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. So move forward. And there's a plus sign and a garbage can. I hit the garbage can by accident when I meant to hit the plus sign. So you can add two. Oh, the reason it didn't add it is because I already have one called move forward. Let's just call this move for now. And then I'm going to hit the plus. And now I have two. I have a, you can add these axis mappings. So I was hitting plus in case this wasn't here, and it was there for me. And what you can do is just click none and press the, I usually do capital W, and that'll generally take me directly to the keyboard. And then that'll add us to our W key. Now I want to add the S key to move backwards, and I'm going to set the scale to -1. The reason for that is if I go back into my scene here and I have my cab selected, notice if I'm moving this on my x-axis, as I move in to the left, which is back, I'm actually subtracting, or that number is getting smaller. And I want to subtract that by -1. And if I move this forward, you can see here, it'll increase it. That'll add 1 to it. And so we'll normally, if we look at the way that we do the math here, I'm actually multiplying the move speed here, which is a value that we'll set up in a second. Let's compile. We'll multiply that by some sort of default value, right, to that 1, so to control the speed, similar to what we've done in Unity and other programs. So anyway, back to our project settings here, input mapping. So go ahead and take a moment, screen grab this or pause the video, and make sure that you set your move forward to a W and S, and then you hit this plus key, and then you create a turn, and you set your A to -1. And this will give you essentially your WASD keys for movement. And then once you're done with that, it should automatically save it. You shouldn't have to click anything or save in there, but I generally just do save all, just to kind of, once in a while, just to make sure things lock in. But it shouldn't, it's just kind of overkill, but that's the way I do things. All right, so once you have that, let's go back to BP Yellow Cab, and let's go to our event graph here. And what we want to do, is we want to grab the input events. So we made one called move forward. So I'm going to right click in here and just start typing move and then forward. And you can see here, there's an access event. This is the one that we just created. And this is mapped to the W and S key. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to type turn because that was what we just created from our event key. So I'm scrolling all the way up because I couldn't see it. And it's at the very top and it says access event turn. So now I have my turn. And I have my move forward here. So let's go ahead and start moving this. So go ahead and select SM cab from your components. And with that selected, what I can do is I can drag out from my execution pin and type add local offset. And you can see here that it's going to have the SM cab as its, that it's going to move off of its scene component, and it'll actually go ahead and map or that target to this. It'll link it in here. Now, if that didn't happen for you, that's okay. Just delete it. Or if it didn't work, then you wouldn't have it. But grab your SM cab, drag it in the scene, and then just link it in here. The next thing I want to do is I just want to move it by the access value. So I'm going to right click on Delta location and I'm going to split that struct pin, and I'm going to grab this access value and I'm going to move it into Delta location X. Now, what's going to happen right now is if I compile and save this and I try to test this to move in my scene, I'm not going to be able to move anything. And the reason for that is if we go into our project settings here and we go to maps and modes, I don't have a game mode in here by default. Now you can select this specific game mode here, or what we can do is we can right click in our cab game here and we can create a new blueprint class called game mode base. And I'm just going to call this cab game mode. And what this does is this is where we set up all of our rules and like what can be controlled and not controlled. And then back in our project settings here under maps and modes, we can change this to cab game mode. And this will be our what we would control, like how we would set up our entire, like, player controller class, all that stuff. So we have a player controller, but we don't have this default pawn here. So what I can do is I can select BP cab or BP yellow cab, which is the one that we're using. And that's this one here. And that'll be our default pawn class. And then we have the player controller, and all the rest of this looks pretty good. Like I said before, I'm just going to save all to kind of lock that into place. So when I press play now and I move in here, you can see that by my default pawn, as I move around, let me hit escape here, it automatically loads in this BP yellow cab. So let me delete this from the scene here for a moment. And let me press play. And you can see it brought in my BP yellow cab as the default pawn for this specific scene, which is kind of cool. Now, I'm actually moving it forward and back, and it's really, really slow when I hit the W and S key. So let's go ahead and go back into our BP yellow cab here, and let's speed that up a little bit. So I'm just going to drag this off, and I'm going to type MUL for multiply. And I want to multiply that by some variable that I can kind of control inside the editor when I'm playing. So under variables here, I'm going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to create a float variable, and I'm going to call this speed. Come on. Let's open that up so we could see it in other classes. Hopefully my F2 is working. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to call this cab speed. Oops. Cab speed. And again, I have a very touchy mouse, and I'm not sure why it's so touchy on Mac. When I usually do this on PC, it doesn't it's not so touchy. So I don't know if you noticed, when I left clicked and dragged it in here, I hit get speed. So now when I connect this, I should be able to adjust this cab speed, and I'm going to link this in here so that it can move faster or slower depending on how quickly it is. The issue is if I click on cab speed now and I try to manipulate this variable, you'll see there's nothing to manipulate. And the reason for that is you always have to compile your variable to get that going. So let's go ahead and just multiply it by 2. And we could maybe, for our cab game, make power boost or something. So now you could see as you move it, it's twice as fast. If I go back in here, let's really kind of juice this up a little bit. And let's see, where is my BP? Here's my yellow cab. And let's make this a lot farther. Let's take this up to like maybe 100 times faster. So let's compile that. And that's too fast. Anyway, we'll go with 20 or something. Okay. So that's a very basic generic move speed. Now let's go ahead and do the turn. Now you would have something a lot more, like, how would I say this? Like the way that we're going to turn it is just going to be based on the position of the object itself. So it's going to rotate more like a tank than it is a car, and that's okay because what we'll do later is as we build our skills and our understanding of the way things operate in blueprints and stuff, you'll be able to do more more finite tuning and make things act more like the real world. Right now, we're just kind of learning how to use blueprints and Unreal. So to do that, all I'm going to do is drag this out. I'm going to type add actor local rotation. And what I have to do again is if I drag this in there, you'll see that it's going to ask me to, promote it to a vector or do things like that. And I'm going to do the same things before where I want to split the struct pin, and that'll just give us access to the X, Y, and Z. And if you're ever not sure because you're going from Unity to Unreal or Blender or whatever, just kind of like I do, and you're not sure, like, am I supposed to rotate this on the Z? I mean, they do give you roll, pitch, and yaw, but let's take a look. So let's drag our BP yellow cab in here. And I'm just going to go to the Z axis here on rotation, and I'm going to rotate it. And that looks about right. That looks like what we want to do. And remember, what I want to rotate it on is using my A and D key. So that's what we have here. This is giving us access to our A and D key. And if I just take this and I put it right into that rotation Z, and I compile and save this, and I press play, what you'll notice is I can move now, and I'm rotating. Now I'm actually rotating way back in on the pivot that is here. Let's see if I can hit F to focus on this. If I look at the way that this is constructed, what it's doing is my actual pivot point on this model is, let's see, selection mode. It's actually it's in between the, let's see if I can kind of bring this up to show you. It's sitting in between the camera and this object here, somewhere around here. And that's why when I'm rotating, it feels very different, like it feels way back here. So what you want to essentially do is grab your SM cab and make that the default scene root. And then now it should rotate slightly better. So you can see here, now it's rotating around the object itself, and I'm able to rotate and move. And that's a little bit, that turn speed again is not the greatest. So we want to do something similar. So I'm actually going to just take a shortcut here and just select that multiply node, copy that by hitting Command C or Control C, and then I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to relink this. And then what I'll do here is the same thing as before. I'll make a variable, and I'll just call this turn speed. Now, something to understand too is you could just adjust the value here too. You don't necessarily need a variable, but it's nice to have a variable because when we're coding this later and we want to increase the turn speed or by having a power boost, we really want to mess with the variable itself, and that's the way to do it. So that's why you want to kind of segment these. So let's compile this so that we can adjust the value. And I mean, the turn speed, I'm going to go 5. I'm not really sure what values these should have, but for now they're there. So anyway, so I'm going to press play, and now you can see I can rotate, and that's pretty nice. It's rotating around, it looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. I'm going to go ahead and close this BP here, and then I might actually just delete this BP cab here. But another thing you could do is, yeah, I think that's good for now. Like we covered a good amount. We covered game modes, we covered movement, and then the next video we'll import in our cab and hook it up.